Hi, everyone, and welcome to weeks 11 and 12. We are coming down the home stretch for the semester. Um, this week, we continue to focus on treatment, and most of the reading, especially in Rothschild and in van der Kolk, speak to um, trauma treatment that might not be what you're used to hearing about. So we hear a lot about CBT and exposure and uh, some other kinds of therapies that DBT but those are all things that require some cognition and having that information processing at the front of the brain available. For those people that live in a world where they have a constant trauma lens, um, their the back of their brain, I think I've mentioned this before, is actually on fire. And we can't get to the front of the brain unless we treat the back of the brain first. So the things that Rothschild and van der Kolk are now talking about, these somatic approaches like yoga and meditation and um, maybe journaling or things like that might be things that people can take their feelings and look at their feelings, feel their body in a different way, put it out on a piece of paper, be able to move that information that's at the back of the brain to the front of the brain to then process it from a different perspective. But we have to start at the back first. So this week, um, let's see, do I have another video here? No. Okay. We'll just keep moving right through. This week, there is an article to read by Dr. Barol, who's one of the faculty at Widener, and Andrew Subert, who's quite wonderful and is the person that I studied EMDR with. EMDR is another of those somatic experiences. Hold on just a second. Sorry, my cat just decided it was time to scratch something downstairs. That's never good. EMDR is a really amazing approach to treating trauma. I learned about it in the early 1990s. It wasn't very popular then, it's become more popular now. It doesn't have as much research behind it as CBT does, but the research that exists is consistent with the efficacy of EMDR is actually greater than CBT. And one of the reasons is that it lasts. So some people that are treated with CBT are effectively treated in the moment and then later lose some of that effectiveness. EMDR, because it works directly with um, parts of the brain uh, that are activated, the limbic system in particular, where the amygdala is fired up, um, that helps to calm things down and it has a longer term effect. Okay. So, Dr. Perry, The Kindness of Children, I love this chapter. Then Rothschild, more somatic techniques, talking about creating safety in therapy. We want to do no harm, which, so the article that you read for the last journal talks about using certain kinds of therapies, one being exposure therapy. And we have to be really careful. Just because it's a therapy doesn't mean it can't be hurtful to people. And exposure therapy can be really quite um, debilitating for some people. It can cause an abreaction. People can become overwhelmed, and and so we have to be really, really careful about how we use something like that. I've worked with people who say to me, I don't ever want to tell my story. And I go with that because they tell themselves a story every single day. They don't need to tell me the story. What I need to know is, how is that story affecting them? How does their body feel? What are their emotions like? What are their thoughts? What do they think about themselves? What are their coping strategies? That's what I need to work with. Okay, and then Dr. Van der Kolk, pages 277 to 346. All right, so this is the third journal, and each of the journals are a little bit different. In this journal, you're going to mention each of the authors, what you've learned from them. So you want to go to the assignment instructions and see what the difference is about this journal. I've also made a video too. Okay, this is due in week 11. Then in week 12, you have a discussion using the social work shared case, Anita and her family. And you're going to, so this is why it's important for, of course, you to do the reading with Rothschild and Van der Kolk. You're going to choose a therapy approach from Rothschild, a somatic approach from Rothschild, something in the chapters 5 to 7, one thing that you think would work with Anita, and then one therapy approach that Van der Kolk talks about somewhere between chapters 13 and 20. And you're going to cite and reference each one. Present the therapy using headings. Tell me what you learned about the therapy. What are the main points approach of the therapy? Then describe what you think Anita's risk factors are that you want to address therapeutically. Explain your clinical rationale for each of these approaches. So why do you think it would be important to use the approach that you've selected with Anita? That's your clinical rationale, okay? Or her family, or she and her family, and then using your citations and references. And then separately, talk about each approach. So the somatic approach, how could that help Anita on a micro, meso, and macro level? And then the therapy approach, same thing. So you're going to separate those and talk about how these approaches would help Anita and or her family cope with their trauma. All right, you're going to have make one response. And then this is the week that your trauma explanation summary video is due. Again, here are the assignment instructions. And in addition to that, there is a video. And if you remember from the very beginning of the course, I made a video for you with Dr. Barol, explaining to her how the course might affect her. And I went through talking to her. She didn't talk back to me till after we were all finished. And then we had some conversation. You're not expected to have that conversation. And that was meant to give you an example of how you might create your video. Okay, so you're making your video with, I think we have like 2 twos and the rest are all threes, triads, and a couple of dyads, talking about your trauma, the topic that you've chosen. Okay, here is here's a grading rubric, but that's all. I go over that in the video also, so be sure to watch that. There's no more technique demonstrations, so we've offered you something that you can use, a loving kindness meditation. It's really quite lovely. All right, and I think that is it. That's it for this week, okay? If you have any questions, please ask me, and I will see you in the course. Thank you. Bye.